When I first started doing street photography, nighttime photography always pretty much scared me. I never knew what to do and I always thought my photos would turn out grainy, underexposed and not very good. But the more and more I do it, the more I realise it's actually a lot of fun. Shooting with artificial light can sometimes give a different perspective, and I find that a lot of cities come alive at night. So in this video I'm going to be talking about a couple of things that I do and I have done to improve my nighttime photography, and things that you should implement into your day-to-day routine in order to get better at shooting when the sun goes down. So the first thing that I want to talk about is a common misconception. You don't need a super low aperture lens and a really fast lens to shoot in nighttime photography. Sure, the lower the aperture, the more light that you let in, but as I've discussed in previous videos, the lowest my lens can go is f2.8. And some of the photography that I get at night is still really vibrant with tons of detail. Now, sure, having a lower aperture lens will allow better light and a more detail to come into the image, but a lot of the time you're not going to be capturing as much detail as you would in the daytime. So instead, you're going to be focusing on the scene and silhouettes as a whole, focusing on using halogen lights and artificial light to improve your image and adding some color in there if you're a color photographer. So what I would do is look for the light. Go around places where there's a lot of artificial light, so storefronts, pub windows, all that sort of stuff can involve a large amount of light being let out into the street and usually flooding the darker areas with a little pocket of light, and then all you need to do is wait for a subject. You can silhouette your subject within that light and then cause a nice little cinematic shot from that. One of my perfect examples of this inside of London is Soho, with all the neon lights around there. You can use the neon lights in all the different colours to affect different areas of your scene, to give it pretty dramatic lighting, and using different colours to cut up the image into different segments to get your images looking really cinematic. If you're not around areas like that though, simple light sources like a street lamp work just as well. You can underexpose your shadows a little bit, make them really dark, and then bring out the colours by boosting the highlights, and just a single street lamp is enough to light your subject. And you can see that in a few of my images that I've done. Take this bridge for example, with this couple walking over it. It's dark everywhere else apart from the street lamps at the end of the bridge, and it lights up the subject and a couple of the trees around the end of the bridge to give it texture. Speaking of texture, we can move on to texture now, because combining light and texture can create the image to look a little less flat and more 3D. You get some extra elements in there and it can make your images really pop when you're shooting at night. For example, when it's cold outside and really warm inside, you tend to get those misty windows and you get silhouettes behind them of people, and that can create a really cool, eerie cinematic effect. And cinematic is basically what you want to go for at night. If you're a subject photographer, it's not going to be as good as if you've got bright lighting conditions. So shooting a scene and making a still out of a movie, if you will, is really what you're going to want to be focusing on at night, hence the neon lights, hence the texture. It comes together to make a really good image. So misty windows, a great thing that I like to shoot a lot of the time, and combining that with reflections if it's raining, you're off to a winner. I like going out and shooting at night if it's raining more so than if it wasn't, because you get a whole different element. The rain on the windows, if the windows ain't misty, you've got still raindrops on the windows, you get a little bit of texture. You can use the focus on the raindrops rather than the people to create a 3D element where your subject is obscured, but the raindrops are in focus with the light hitting off individual raindrops and stuff like that. You can get really creative with it. And then if it's been raining onto different surfaces as well, you can use your reflections to bounce the light off of different things. You've got more light there, and you can use the texture of the reflections to really create your images and make them come to life. For example, this image here was taken on a phone, believe it or not. I really like this image. Shot in monochrome using my inbuilt phone's camera effects, and I shot a misty window of a pub. As you can see, it's quite busy inside, but all the silhouettes behind the misty window looks really quite eerie and cinematic. But then you got the car out front, which originally I thought was going to really obscure my image, but I think it actually makes it a little bit better. You got the reflections off of the lights of the pub hitting the car, and you've also got the raindrops on the car as well, making it a little brighter and making the image stand out a little bit more. So you've got your light source and you've found the scene that you want to shoot, and you've got a 3D element. You're already miles ahead of where you were, where your image is underexposed, there's nothing really interesting, and you could barely pick out your subject from its background. So now what you're going to want to do is really hone in on the locations that you shoot. Unlike daylight, where everywhere is covered by daylight, then you can't really do that at nighttime. Sure, some areas, especially big cities, are always going to have light sources somewhere, but you really need to find good locations to shoot, especially when the sun goes down. That's why I personally wander around Soho when it gets dark, because of all the artificial light around there. But if you're not around big cities, really hunt for the locations that you want to go and shoot in, and once you've found them, sit and wait for the right subject. There's two types of photography when it comes to street photography. You've got hunting and you've got fishing. Hunting is where you go around and take pictures as you go. I do this quite a lot in locations that I know, unless I find a really good scene with really good lighting, and then I sit and wait. Sitting and waiting is what I do a lot at nighttime. In fact, that's the only thing I can really do at nighttime. You can't just walk around and take pictures as you go. You really need to sit and wait for the right moment. And that's called fishing. So really honing on your fishing skills, and just sit when you found a right scene, sit and wait, and then the subject, let that come to you. As long as it takes, just sit there, wait, and you'll get the shot eventually. And really, that's as much as you need to get a really good night photography shot. You're just going to need to keep practicing. The more you go out there, the better you get, and that's the same with any form of photography. The more you practice, the better you are. So the TLDR of this whole video is, once you've found a scene with good artificial light, sit and wait there and wait for your subject. You don't need a super low f-stop lens. You can go out with whatever you have on you and still get good images. They might not be as bright and let as much light in, but you're not requiring so much detail with night photography. You can get your subjects silhouetted perfectly fine. And then if you find a strong, bold backlight, if you will, from a shop window or something like that, that will light your scene plenty, and you can go from there. That's all for this video. If it did make you wonder that if you should go out and shoot at night, let me know down below in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Really do appreciate your time. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.